Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
A lot of interesting things to get to today. So we are going to break down that Fetterman Oz debate that, of course, has caught everyone's attention. A lot of questions there. And also we have some new allegations against Herschel Walker down in Georgia. So we'll catch you up to speed on everything related to the midterms as we head down the stretch. New Biden comments with regards to Ukraine and Russia's potential nuclear use, and also those dirty bomb allegations. So we'll break that down for you. Also, supposedly, the Elon Musk Twitter deal is going to close tomorrow. He showed up at headquarters carrying a sink for some reason. We don't really know.
We'll take it.
This also comes amid, this part was actually the most interesting to me, some new research that came out about how Twitter is kind of dying.
Yes.
Losing some of their biggest users, are like not really posting anymore, especially in like news and politics, which is the most profitable topic areas. So we'll break that down for you as well. Ken Klippenstein had a great scoop about the Fed and really exposed something that goes on there that almost no one knows about, which is they are lobbied just like legislators here are lobbied by business and banking interests, but without any sort of democratic pushback or accountability on the other side. So he goes deep into how that all works. Also, Senator Menendez, once again, under criminal investigation. So we will tell you what we know about that. I'm also very excited about our guest today. He's a former longtime CIA agent. He was actually station chief in Moscow, which is crazy. And he has a pretty interesting theory about exactly who really murdered JFK. This all comes amid the reason we're doing this now is because the Biden administration is being sued for not releasing the JFK assassination-related documents that they are congressionally mandated to. Now, they were supposed to be released under the Trump administration. Trump administration kicked the ball to the Biden administration. Biden administration still stonewalling. What are they hiding, everybody? We're going to talk to Rolf Mowat Larson about all of that. But we did want to start with that Fetterman Oz debate. You guys know the backstory here. John Fetterman, the Democratic nominee, current lieutenant governor of the state of Pennsylvania, suffered a stroke just before he won his primary. Now, he has only recently started doing any interviews whatsoever. There was a huge kerfuffle after he gave one interview to NBC News, and the reporter indicated, hey, he had trouble understanding what I was saying in small talk. So this was a much anticipated debate. It's the only debate that these two are having, and let's just say, it was really rough. It was very rough to watch. We wanted to pull a clip for you that was not sort of like cherry picked or just like, the worst moments or even the best moments. So we decided to pull for you both of their closing statements, both Oz and Fetterman, so you could just get a sense of how this all went. Let's take a look.
All right. At this time, we are ready for our closing statements. You each have 90 seconds to convince Pennsylvanians to vote for you on Election Day. Mr. Fetterman, you are first. 90 seconds.
Once again, I would just like to say that my campaign is all about fighting for anyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that had to get back up again. I'm also fighting for any forgotten community all across Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that had to be made to get back up. I've made my entire career dedicating to those kinds of pursuits. I started as a GED instructor back in Braddock over 20 years ago because I believe it's about serving Pennsylvania, not about using Pennsylvania for their own end interests as well. To me, careers are revealed by your real underlying values. And my values have always been about fighting for forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Mr. Oz, your final thoughts, 90 seconds.
I've loved traveling to the four corners of the beautiful Commonwealth, and I've heard your problems. I'm a surgeon, doctor. I listen to what you say, and I'm trying to help address them today. I've talked to seniors worried their Social Security checks wouldn't go far enough with the raging inflation. I've talked to couples when I make their first down payment on a new house and they can't afford it anymore because of interest rates. I've talked to families.
You want to cut Social Security.
Mr. Fetterman, it's his turn for his closing.
I've talked to families worried about fentanyl showing up in their mailbox and literally taking the lives of their children who they find blue in bed. I've talked to families who won't let their kids go outside because of the crime wave that's been facilitated by left radical policies like the ones John Fetterman has been advocating for. But here's the deal. Right? None of this has to happen. This is all very addressable. I'm a surgeon. I'm not a politician. We take big problems, we focus on them, and we fix them. We do it by uniting, by coming together, not dividing. And by doing that, we can get ahead. But I've got one question to challenge you with, just one question. If you take what I'm saying to heart, ask yourself this and others in your family. Are you unhappy with where America's headed? I am. And if you are as well, then I'm the candidate for change. I'm a living embodiment of the American dream. I believe we're the land of opportunity, the land of plenty. I believe we can balance a budget without recklessly spending. I believe we can have an unleashed energy policy that helps us all. I believe that we can have safe city streets and a secure border so legal immigrants can come across, but you shut the fentanyl out. I believe we can give parents choice in where their kids go to school. We can have affordable health care. But most of all, I believe in you. And if you can do this together, and we can, I would ask for your vote on Election Day.
So it gives you a sense of how the debate went. I mean, it was difficult to watch. And I can't stop thinking about it because I just honestly feel so badly for John Fetterman. I mean, you think about it like, here's a man who was, larger than life and this political tour de force. We interviewed him before the stroke. We interviewed him actually before he sort of blew up on the national stage, and we're impressed with him. He's never been like, Oz is a television personality. He's obviously very nimble on his feet and very, smooth talking and all those things. Like, that was never Fetterman. Fetterman was always like very sort of plain spoken, very direct. So they would have stylistically, even without the stroke, come across very different. But I just can't stop thinking about, there you are on the cusp of this primary victory. You're not just, a standard issue political figure. This is a guy who really, cut this imposing figure, was incredibly unique in terms of the Democratic Party, really potential, massive star power. And now struggling to just, basically articulate his thoughts. And again, just so you know that we're not cherry picking here, this was the reaction to the people who watched the debate. 82% said that Oz won. 18% said Fetterman won. So, I mean, overwhelmingly, people felt like Oz had the better night, no doubt about it. And, we're going to talk a little bit more about the media reaction. I do think I listened to him in previous interviews where he definitely, you could tell he had a stroke. We've seen him on the campaign trail. You could tell he was struggling for words at times, mushing things together. Sometimes something wouldn't come out. Obviously, he had to have the closed captioning in order to process. This was the worst that I'd seen him, though, and I feel like the stress and pressure of the situation really kind of got to him. On the question of what it's going to mean politically, I have no idea.
Same.
I continue to believe that probably the biggest issue for Fetterman is the same issue that every Democrat across the country is suffering, which is like, Arizona is now a toss-up, according to the latest analysis, because trends are moving in Republicans' direction across the board. The head of the DCCC, who's in a Biden plus 10 district, is on the ropes. So the national wins are probably the biggest problem that he has. I think, it's reasonable for the campaign to feel like, okay, this probably is going to knock us back a few points. And ultimately, in a race that's as close as this, that could be the difference. But, I can't help but admire the guy for having the courage to actually do this, because you look in Arizona, Katie Hobbs in the governor's race, like, she's just not debating. She has no health issue or whatever. She's just afraid that Carrie Lake is going to get the better of her because she's a better debater. I mean, literally.
No, you're right. That's
right.
True.
And
That's
I think
true.
that all candidates should have to debate. I think it's important for people to have transparency about, where he is in his recovery. I don't think that should be off the table to discuss. For me personally, it wouldn't be a hard decision, because the most important thing to me is how he would ultimately vote. You're up against a dude who doesn't even believe in the federal minimum wage. But ultimately, that's for voters to decide, and we'll see what they think.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to be mean, and because I see that many people are upset about this, but I thought that was stunning in that it was much worse than I think that his campaign and him had ever let on before. And I do think it's an issue, which is that at the end of the day, the man has not actually released his medical records. All he's released is a signed letter from a doctor who is a campaign donor to him, who claims he's going to be better. We were looking previously at a neurologist clip where they said that, look, the best recovery comes in 3 to 6 months. It's been 6 months. There's no indication that he's going to get better from here. I don't think we can believe in good faith that the man is telling us the truth, that he has zero cognitive damage. I mean, listen, we are all armchair people. I have no idea what's going on inside of his brain. That's for a neurologist to decide. And they have not released his doctor to questioning. It's on him after that display to prove to us that his brain is not permanently damaged. And unfortunately, I come away from that. And that's the least amount of stress that you might face one day as a senator. And I just disagree wholeheartedly with this ongoing cope and meme I see on the left, which is like, well, what all senators do is just show up and vote. I'm like, okay, hold on a second. This is one of the most powerful people in Washington is an individual senator. They can hold up legislation. They can hold up nominees. They vote for judges. They vote for wars. They vote for treaties. They decide immense things. Look at the power of Rand Paul when he wants to be useful.
Right.
Look at the power of Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema when they want to be useful.
Well, that's
I
why
am just not going to sit here and be told that it's okay for somebody whose brain is possibly fried to be a senator from the state of Pennsylvania.
Conservatives who are most critical of Fetterman,
they're pro Herschel Walker. They're full of shit. I agree with you.
They don't really care about the health issues. They care about how he's going to vote. He's not going to vote the way they want him to.
Sure.
So, I personally, for me, again, it wouldn't be a difficult decision because there's nothing to me that indicates he doesn't know what his values are, that he wouldn't know how to, take a vote on the issues that matter to me. You're up against a dude who literally doesn't support the federal minimum wage, has actually been much cagier about what he thinks on a variety of issues, especially abortion. And so, at the end of the day, like, how they're going to vote on the issues and the bills that are in front of them, I think that is the most important thing. Now, would it be better if you had someone like, for your normal run-of-the-mill senator, it actually is just the taking the votes that is the thing. You do have people like, Elizabeth Warren, I have issues with her, but she brings something to the table and her questioning and whatever that obviously goes beyond just like taking a vote. But ultimately, with a lot of just your kind of standard issue run-of-the-mill senators, basically the job is to vote on issues. So anyway, I mean, the other thing that cuts against this is, Oz does continue to come off as kind of like a smarmy asshole. And I don't think that he handled this well because he didn't need to take shots at Fetterman. There were some sort of underhanded jabs at Fetterman's health condition currently. And so he continues to be like not a very likable guy. And ultimately, if I had to bet, I would say this was, damaging to Fetterman, probably cuts a couple points off of him. But I also just really don't know because voters have responded in ways that I've been surprised about. Again, I was actually talking to my mom about this, and she's my like touchstone for the kind of like normie swing voter type. And her response was empathy and like, God, I give the guy credit for having the courage to do this.
I think you're right, which is that, look, I have found myself with the vehemence of old people every time I've gone after Joe Biden. They're like, oh, can't you cut him some slack? I'm like, personally, I think we should hold our leaders to a higher thing. But listen, the man won the presidency. So I'm like, what do I know? All right.
He won the presidency, and he continues to be, outside of a few people, probably a Democrat's strongest chance for the next time around.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm like, look,
Don't know.
People can make their own minds. As I alluded to, let's put this on the screen. I'll never forget reading this. I actually read this back in college. It's 2012. Big study from political scientists that reviewed reams of political polling data going back over decades, all the way from JFK onward, do presidential debates. And those are the highest engaged debates.
Yeah.
Do they matter? Almost never.
Not really.
They basically are a wash. Now, as Ryan Grimm once said on our show, all of the studies that regard candidate quality never had to deal with candidates as poor quality as Oz, Herschel Walker, and Blake Masters. So
right.
I don't know, but those people are all tied in the polls. If I were to bet on the fundamentals, I would bet on all three to actually win their race. So in this debate, will it matter? Look, I gave you my personal view. I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that my personal view has any sway or is even in the median mind of the Pennsylvania voter.
Right.
I was talking recently. The median Pennsylvania voter is a 53-year-old man, 53-year-old white man who did not go to college. I am not that person. I don't live in I've only been a couple of times. I have no idea what these people are going to vote on. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I trust in the voters. They can decide what, themselves. I do think the major takeaway is that Oz, for all the so-called backhand, I didn't read into it as much. I watched the whole debate. I didn't see a lot of that. For what I saw, the major takeaway from the RNC was they were playing his loop. He had a terrible answer, to be honest, on fracking, where he was basically like, I support fracking. Yeah, Fetterman.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, I support fracking. It was very stilted.
It was garbled.
It was also a flip-flop, right? Because he actually did not support fracking. I remember we were talking about this back whenever we interviewed him. So they are playing clips back-to-back of him used to saying it and hammering him actually more on a policy matter, given the gas prices, plus the crime. I mean, that's one that's just
I honestly don't know that fracking is like the issue that it once was in that region, but I do think, listen, again, my analysis in general, and we're about to talk about Herschel Walker here in a few minutes, but is that as much as I would like candidate quality to
but
to
it doesn't.
I just don't think it really does.
Right.
We see all of these races moving in the same direction right now. You know, whether it's Fetterman, who's struggling in Pennsylvania, whether it's Mark Kelly, who, you know, is seen as a very strong candidate out in Arizona.
He is strong. He's losing.
Blake Masters is closing the gap there. That's now a toss-up race. Whether it's, you know, down in Georgia, like every single race seems to be moving and shifting towards the Republicans. I don't see that as having much to do with any of these candidates' individual, like, personality, charisma, platform, abilities, whatever. I think it has a lot more to do with the national mood. So do I think it might matter on the margins? Yeah. And if this comes down to a few thousand votes in, you know, a few key districts, then you could be making the case that this debate was the difference maker. If it ends up not really being close in either direction, then, you know, obviously not. Just so we have a sense of where this is right now, and this kind of underscores our point. Right now in the 538 average, Fetterman is plus 2.3. There was a time when he was up 12 in the average, okay? Now, again, that's even before there were any, you know, interviews or really any very strong concerns about his recovery process. That tightening and closing of the gap really has everything to do with the national wins, because we see that happening in race after race after race. You know, the other thing that I think is important to note here, not only that the gap has closed, but there was a time when Fetterman's average was up over 50%. And now it's down at 47.2%. And I think also a lot of what's happened in some of these races where the base didn't love the candidate they ended up with, or there were candidate quality issues on the Republican side, the Republican base is also starting to come home. And you've seen that, you know, certainly here, and you've seen it in Georgia as well.
No, I think you're right, Krystal. And actually, I just checked the RCP average. Their average actually has Fetterman only up by 1.3%. I mean, given what we know—
I think the 538 one, like, takes into account a bunch of whatever.
538 is more weighted. So RCP is just like a true average. And if the true average is 1.3, we know the miss in Pennsylvania to be 4 points from 2020. No indication that the same miss isn't there. So I would probably rather be Oz right now, given the way that things are trending. But again, like you said, it's not just about Oz. You have to zoom out and just say all GOP races, national ballot, everything moving in that direction. Fundamentals, look, I'm just going to keep betting on them from the future.
Yeah.
I mean, look, maybe we could be completely wrong. Maybe Fetterman pulls it off by 2.
Who knows? Maybe the miss is in the other direction for some unknown reason, but based on recent history,
we can only go to war with the battle or the information that we have.
Yeah.
And with that, like, look, I put my money on it. I was like, all right, fine. I think Oz is going to win.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.